The Jar of Happiness by Alicia Burrows. The Jar of Happiness. Once there was a little girl called Meg who invented her own kind of happiness. It tasted like chocolate ice cream, apple juice, and sunshine. It smelt of warm biscuits and the seaside. It was red, yellow, and all of the best colors. Meg took it everywhere with her. We're going to stop our reading there as we sit on our trail, and we're going to take our own jar and, like Meg, create along our way the smells, the colors, and the representations of things that make us happy. We're going to put inside this jar. Typically, we wouldn't take things from nature, but in this activity of nature exploration, we want you to think about the colors, the sights, the sounds, the smells that make you happy. And we're going to carry them like Meg does in this jar. We'll return back to the book, and we see that Meg took her jar of happiness to her friend Zoe. She was feeling a little glum. The jar of happiness dressed up with a hat, and Meg tried to make her friend Zoe laugh. I think it worked. Oh, there's Meg's Oma. It cheered up Oma, who felt a bit poorly, as Meg drummed upon it, and her stuffed animal friends played other instruments. She put on a whole concert. Meg shared her jar of happiness with Leon too, though only when he was being nice to her. She looks like she's very upset. She climbed all the way to the top of the tree. Leon wants her to hand it over. Well, one morning, Meg could not find her jar of happiness. She looked, and looked, but she couldn't find the jar anywhere. As we look into our own jars of happiness and see what we've collected thus far, Mrs Kelli has a dandelion that represents the bees, summer and spring, a small piece of bamboo. This brings me joy. It creates calmness when I think about bamboo and where its origins come from and how it's used to represent resilience and strength. And then a piece of birch wood, or a piece of birch bark. Of course, when it's on the ground, we consider it dead. But the bonuses of birch bark is that it's just so glorious. It's soft and comforting. It can be used as twine or twindle, which is like kindling but not kindling, in a fire if we were to start one, which reminds me of summer. And so let's continue along our journey and our hike as we look for more things to fill. We left Meg, and she was just looking and looking and looking for that jar of happiness. Where could it be? Meg visited Zoe, who showed her how to make happiness out of smiles. Meg, although happy, still without her jar. She visited Oma, who gave her a bit of happiness made from hugs and tickles. Oma hugs are the best. And Leon explained how thinking happy thoughts can scare away gloomy feelings, bad smells, and even monsters. As we walk through Meg and Leon find happiness when you think about happy thoughts, and they scare away the gloomy feelings, bad smells, and even the monsters. By the end of the day, Meg still hadn't found her jar, but she had plenty of happiness. Do you see that friendly cat underneath that bed? What do you think she found? Meg's happiness is full. And just like that, we all sleep. And as we look to see the remains of what we've picked up in our own jars, I found this stick along the way, which reminds me of an ice cream cone, so that summer's near. The moss that's built up is similar to bark on a tree, but it is indeed a type of moss. Also in my jar is what reminds me of a tumbleweed. It's a ball of this funky green hay that can get caught on us like a burr, but at the same time resembles that tumbleweed. And for me, tumbleweed reminds me of Arizona, a place that I lived and visited. And the tumbleweed is one of their pieces of nature in the desert.